There we go. That should be pretty good now. But anyhow, thanks for letting me know. I don't know why the microphone levels reset every time I kind of randomly. I haven't figured out why, but I think I just have to check it before I start the streams. I mean, it's I don't know why. I just, when I get to do these streams, you know, it's like, wow, it's almost 3 o'clock. So I just kind of put a shirt on, sit down, and turn the camera on and go. And I got just regular tea now because it's summer, so I don't like drinking hot coffee during the stream anymore. So I switched over to just hot, cold tea. Just so you know. Now I feel like Jay Christina, right? Because doesn't he like have tea or something he drinks all the time during his streams? That guy, I haven't seen anything from him lately, but I haven't been looking that hard. But hey, Wahab is here. Also, I have the live stream after this one where I do the photo editing, and I put a picture out there of one of my photos that you guys can download and edit. So that's going to be at 4:30. I got a couple of submissions already. I'm surprised there wasn't more. It's only been 2 so far. And there's always been, you know, then a handful of pictures that you guys like to submit for me to edit, which is always a lot of fun and a great learning experience, I think, for everyone. The YouTube stream started in 144p. Wow. Wow, so it shouldn't be any lag then, right? I don't know. That's weird, but yeah, you know, there's a little cog down in the bottom right where you can kind of change the video resolution to full HD. That's how I transmit my streams until I don't know, I get a 4K capture card or something. But I don't see the point in 4K on just a chit chat, right? God, what the heck? What the heck was my video about this week? Something to do with editing. So I did want to talk about it. Oh, working with tone curves. So yeah, that video, I mean, the video is basically about working with the tone curves when you're doing photo editing. And it's really a great little tool to learn how to use. It's in most softwares that do photo editing where you can adjust the tone curves. You know, when I watched it again, I did leave out there's one little gap in the flow of information in that video where I talk about the values from 0 to 255, and I should have mentioned, you know, during that transition that colors are represented in numbers between 0 and 255, and then so when you're affecting the tone curve, you're affecting those numbers or the values of the colors, and you know, the digital representation of the colors on our screens, and everything is in 8-bit. Uses 8 bits to cover all of the colors that we see. So you know, the raw files are 12 bits, so there's a lot of information there that we're not seeing until we do the editing via tone curves or whatever adjustments there are. But tone curves gives you a lot more control over the image if you want to get all creative and fancy about it. You know, you can get away with just using the sliders, right? But the granularity in the sliders is a little bit coarse. You know, kind of like the exposure slider, right? You can add plus or minus exposure compensation with a slider in post-processing, but that's it. It applies it to the entire image, versus, you know, with a tone curve you can apply it to just certain tones in the image, like in the shadows or in the highlights. You can affect the exposure at a much finer level. And again, if you watch the video, it'll make more sense. But I just wanted to add that one little bit of information about colors between 0 and 255, because I had actually made you know, I had this whole thing planned with that color chart thing that I created at the end. I was actually going to make that the beginning of the video and talk about colors and how they mix to create other colors. And you know, then I just felt like it didn't really help you use the tone curves too much. It was just more of a background or underlying kind of foundation information about tone curves and what numbers they're affecting. So I just cut all of that out and just decided to go with dealing with using the tone curve itself. So I started out with an example of editing a picture very quickly, and then I went into a little bit more detail about how I chose different points to edit, different colors to edit. And you know, not my best work in terms of editing, right? But it was just for demonstration purposes. But it seems like I got really good feedback on it, though, so that was nice. It's always nice to get good feedback on a video because they take so much time to make. I feel like I might have to redo my workflow so I can crank out more videos. Because a lot of channels, what they do is they'll make videos, you know, constantly, right? But then edit them and they might not get published for days later or weeks later until it actually goes online. And you know, my videos, it's more like I just kind of just think about something that might be kind of neat and sit down and start recording it. And if I remember to turn the camera and the mic on, I can usually do it in one take. Sometimes I just sit down and start talking, and then it's like, damn it, I forgot to turn the camera on. And then I have to do the whole video over. Oh my God, those are good times, let me tell you. Oh, and you like the video about the JPEG versus RAW? That came out okay too. It was it's another video that if I had sat down and just watched it and then did another take or cut or edit, I could have probably organized that a little better too. But you know, you sort of at one point you sort of get paralyzed with overanalyzing and editing that you don't get anything done. So it's a problem that I have, meaning I don't plan or organize anything. I'm very just, if I'm in the mood, I'll just make a video. You know, unlike a lot of other channels like Robin and Peter and Jimmy, and they you know, they have a schedule, right? Every Tuesday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Friday, whatever their schedule is, they crank out a video. You know, they take it very seriously. Which is great for you guys, right? Because they can fill in a lot of gaps when I'm not making videos. They can teach you something else that I didn't cover. Like I saw Robin put out one this morning about the silent shutter. I think it was. I didn't watch it. I just saw the thumbnail for it, so I gotta watch that later. But I liked his JPEG video a lot, actually. He did a good job on that. I learned something about Olympus JPEGs in that, and the settings he recommended, I would say are fair. You know, they do work well, just using natural color profiles, 0 saturation, 0 contrast. But you know, I like to be more creative, so I'm always playing with those settings. Let's see. What does it say here? The video about JPEG Lightroom is free on Android, just a beta. Yeah, that's true. I haven't really played with that much. I think I downloaded it and did 1 or 2 images about a year ago, and then I never played with it again. Let's see. There's a 90-day free demo and $25 one-time purchase of Affinity Photo ends on the 20th. It's the best alternative. Yeah, I hear a lot of good things about Affinity. I haven't tried it myself. Lightroom on Android. Yeah, you can, you know. You can edit on a tablet, right? If you've got a 10-inch tablet, certainly better than your phone. But there's not as many controls, right? If you want to get creative or do some heavy editing on the images, there's not a lot of control. There's just your normal highlight, shadows, exposure, color, and a few filters, right? If I remember correctly. It's not very elaborate, so it's just for basic editing. I think the Olympus app is good enough for basic editing. And there's another software called Photoline. Never heard of that one. On anti-shock. Huh. Yeah, I have a video on the shutter modes, right? Where I talk about anti-shock. I haven't watched his, so I'm not sure what he talks about in that. But you know, anti-shock is basically a electronic first curtain shutter depending on the camera. The older cameras like the EM10 Mark II, the Pen PL8, probably all the TruePic 6 and 7 cameras that have anti-shock, they actually close the shutter first and then open. So it's not a full-on electronic shutter mode. Front curtain electronic shutter. It is front curtain electronic shutter, but it's not a full-on, meaning mechanical shutter actually does close first, then open, then close again every time, even in anti-shock mode. But setting the delay to 0 or 1 or 2 seconds, whatever that setting is, just delays how long it before it opens to do the electronic first curtain shutter. So it's just a very subtle difference. The newer cameras like my Pen F and I think even the EM5 Mark II and the EM1 Mark II, it's a true electronic first curtain shutter, meaning it only closes the second curtain, but it takes the image without actually closing the curtain on the shutter. What's my thoughts on Pluto trigger? I don't have any. I have no idea what that is. What a Pluto trigger is. Workspace is great and the manual's only about 60 pages. I thought it was only like 2 pages, the manual. That's the only one I've seen. I'll have to look and see if there's actually a full-on manual. I should read it sometime. So Robin talked about zero delay anti-shock. Yeah, so if it's a true electronic first curtain shutter, then zero delay makes sense. In the cameras like on the EM10 Mark II, the shutter actually closes first before it starts the electronic first curtain shutter. It still reduces the shutter shock, but because there's a delay, but it does affect your continuous shooting mode. So I don't know if we talked about that either, but I did notice when I'm using anti-shock shutter mode that the continuous shutter speed slows down just a tiny bit, maybe 1 frame out of 8, you know, but it is slower than using just mechanical shutter without anti-shock. Oh, Bob's worried if you get the Adobe Suite, you'll spend time editing instead of taking. I don't have that problem, honestly. I got Photoshop and I got Workspace, and I don't use Lightroom that much. I use it time to time. I use mostly Workspace to edit my photos. And the only time I really need to use Lightroom is when I really need to pull some highlights and shadows, because Workspace is very bad at pulling highlights and shadows. I mean, you can do a little bit, maybe one stop, and even then I don't think it's that great. It's, you know, I should do a video comparison so you guys can see. It'll help you make a decision about maybe buying a third-party software if it makes sense. So I think ultimately you really do need to buy a third-party photo editing software if you really want to pull some highlights and shadows. That's where Workspace is a little bit weak, and it's very weak at the exports too. The JPEG export is fine, but the TIFF export is not very good. I'm not sure if it's exporting just an 8-bit TIFF, and maybe that's why. But the TIFF images that get exported out of Workspace are also very poor in quality, despite their file sizes. You know, I'll get like the file size 3 times the size of the original, but then, you know, the actual information or data in the files still seems to be missing. So I don't know if there's I haven't really analyzed it that hard yet. I just did a comparison in Lightroom with exports from Photoshop and exports from Workspace into TIFF, and the TIFF files coming out of Workspace just sucked. You know, the resolution's there, no problem there, but the being able to push and pull the shadows and highlights, that was definitely limited compared to exporting TIFF from, say, Photoshop. So yeah, Photoscape is great. I use Photoscape time to time for the collage effects that you can do, where you can mix a bunch of pictures together very easily. So I like Photoscape a lot, and I did play with some of the art filters they have in there, like the old film effects, and then they have easy framing and easily add text, and it's really a great free software. And I think even if you buy it, it's only like $39 or something. I haven't tested it to see if there is some how good the push and pull is on the highlights and shadows. But I guess I could. That should be my next video, right? Talking about the softwares that I have. I think the best software really, and you can find it for $59 to $79 US, is the Adobe Photoshop Elements. I still can't think of another software that I would prefer over that if I was just going to pay for a license, because it has so many features in it in terms of data asset management, which is a big deal, and then it has the Photoshop engine, which is the same as the one they use in the paid the monthly subscription version. It does like 90 to 95% of everything that you can do with the paid Photoshop, and then it has all the bells and whistles that Photoshop, the subscription Photoshop, does not have, like doing framing and some other things that you don't that a professional wouldn't care about doing, but as a consumer, they're pretty neat. Oh, Photoscape X processes RAWs too. Yeah, like I said, I'll have to do some comparisons between the different editors that I've used and see if there's really much difference. I did notice that Lightroom does seem to do the best job at pulling highlights and shadows over even Capture One or what's the other one? Luminar. Like I said, I haven't tried Affinity. You also need a PSW to organize and manage. Yeah, Photoshop Elements would organize organize all your photos. That's what I used for the first year when I got started in digital photography, was Photoshop Elements. It's still installed on my other laptop, Photoshop Elements 11. They're up to they've done about 10 versions since I've bought mine. But even that basic Photoshop Elements 11 does everything the new one does in terms of being able to really edit a photo well. I didn't think, because I downloaded the 2019 version about a year ago because I was considering just buying that instead of subscribing to the monthly. And the main difference between the Photoshop Elements and the subscription one, at least for me, and one of the tools was in the layering. I wasn't able to easily layer things from Lightroom, export those into Photoshop Elements. Because from Lightroom I can export as layers, multiple images, and then work with them on Photoshop, which I do a lot of in my real estate photography, right? I'm always blending images for exposure, you know, pseudo HDR, right? And it wasn't easy to do in Photoshop Elements alone. I'd have to probably import them directly into Photoshop Elements and work with them that way. But even then, I'm not sure it would be as easy as the subscription version. So that's why I subscribe. It's just for that one tool. And that one tool is something you won't find in Capture One or Affinity or any of these other softwares. And it's the only reason I spend $120 a year is for that one tool. And it's a shame because I don't need the other 90% of things that Photoshop can do. It just does that one thing. And I can't do my work without it, you know. So if you're saying Affinity Photo is free for 90 days, I'll have to try it. And AC/DC is got a lot of fans, right? But every photo editor has their fan base, right? And they like it. So it's hard to say if one, you know, I never like to say one is better than another. It's just a matter of it's like cameras, right? I mean, I like Olympus because of the ergonomics and all the bells and whistles we get with them. But that doesn't mean Fuji isn't just as good a camera, right? Just some people like Fuji better, right? The ergonomics and the colors and all of that. But ultimately, all that stuff doesn't matter, right? It's just about taking pictures and enjoying enjoying this hobby, right? There are several people in this same boat. Yeah. Yeah, the program's only as good as it matches what you want and you can absorb. Yeah. Like I said, it's if it wasn't for that one thing in Photoshop CC, I wouldn't subscribe to it. It's just that one thing. I think as a casual photographer, you know, as a hobbyist, I would be fine with Photoshop Elements. And I'd have to, you know, Photoscape X doesn't have a good data asset management. None of them do, really. And that's a big deal when you have tens of thousands of images to be able to organize them easily. I don't know about AC/DC. I haven't played with that in probably 2 or 3 years. And you know, once you try something, you can't try it again, right? You don't get another 30-day free trial, as far as I know. I guess there's some workaround. Use a different email or something. But if I didn't like it during the 30 days enough to buy it, I don't know why I would try it again. The strength in AC/DC is that it actually uses the ITPC info in the files. A lot of photo editors don't take advantage of the ITPC metadata that you can save with the files, as well as AC/DC does. That is the one thing that attracted me to it initially. Because like I said, I'm into like trying to organize my photos in a way, and AC/DC is the only one that takes advantage of the ITPC info. And the challenge is no other software that I'm aware of really takes advantage of it in terms of being able to organize your photos. So if you want to use another photo software or want to transition over to something else, for example, then if you organize your photos with ITPC info instead of, you know, whatever other database management means that might be available, it's not going to be compatible with other software. Whereas other software, a lot of times you do find import conversions, you know, from Lightroom to Capture One and back, and things like that. But yeah, Dave got 15,000 JPEGs. Yeah, it's shocking how many pictures you end up having. There's a new moon on Sunday. If the skies are clear, you know, it's summertime, so we get a lot of scattered thunderstorms time to time, so it's hard. Oh, hey Rick, how are you? Oh my goodness, I hope you find Magrat. Hopefully he's okay. Or she's okay, yeah. It's always worrisome when a cat or, you know, one of your pets go missing. I remember when I was younger, my cat, the family cat, I shouldn't say my cat, would disappear for like a week at a time, right? And then show up out of nowhere. Because it was an outdoor cat. We didn't really keep the cat indoors, but except when he was there. But if he wanted to go out, we let him out. But there were times he'd be gone for a week or 2 weeks at a time in the winter. And we're like, what the heck, right? And one day I'm standing in the driveway working on the car or something. And my cat is over there. And I think we named it Misty. Yeah, the cat's name was Misty. And so Misty is sitting there in the driveway just watching me work on the car for whatever reason. And this other car pulls up on the street and pulls into my driveway and says, "Excuse me, sir." I says, "Yes." He goes, "That's my cat." And I looked at Misty and I'm like, "No, I'm pretty sure that's my cat." He goes, "No, it's my cat." I'm like, "Really?" And then he stands there and he goes, Bosco, come here, Bosco." And sure enough, if Misty didn't go running over to him, like happy to see him. And so the cat had two homes. Misty had two homes, basically, for the years that we had him. But I asked the guy, I said, "Where did you find the cat? Or where did you get the cat?" And he said, "Oh, well, he came up to my house one day and I just started feeding him. And then over the last couple of years, you know, he just became our cat." I said, "Oh, okay, well, you know, we got ours from another person that gave us the cat. So we're the original owners." And he goes, "Oh, okay." So he stopped feeding the cat and stuff, you know, I assume, because Misty was around a lot more after that. But so maybe that's what's going on with Magrat, right? Maybe he's just, or she's just found another home to snuggle up to. Your cat's gone feral. Oh my god. I would love to have another cat, but there's two issues I have. The major one being my dog would kill it. You know, Ellie. She is not one for friends. And then number two is I'm not big on having a litter box in the house either. And keeping that clean. That's kind of a minor thing, annoyance. I guess it's a fair trade-off for the benefits of having a cat. I mean, cats are great companions, in a lot of ways, right? More so than dogs in a way, but they're also very handy to keep the little rats and mice out of the house. You know, I'd love to get my cat in the attic and get rid of the bats out of there. God. They you know, I got a little bat cave up in the ceiling. I meant to get rid of them before it got too warm. Now I think it might be too late. Oh, Nature's asking, what's a fast way to get a picture of taking a photo of a fast moving bee to get in focus and the wings showing as fans? Ooh. For me, it's just been luck of the draw. I don't have any specific technique. Because bees are so tiny, you know, it's hard for the autofocus system to find it. No litter box, you have a front door. I'm sorry to hear about Bob dying. It's always sad when animals pass. I feel bad for all the animals Ellie's killed, you know. It's especially the possums and the groundhogs. She's killed a handful of those, and they're actually kind of cute when you look at them. Not so much the possum; they're scary, but they're still kind of cute, right? They're living creatures. I feel so bad, but yeah. You're gonna try, huh? Yeah. Yeah, it's tough, right? You know, I was thinking, like, if the bee lands on the flower or is very close to landing on the flower, I would try maybe focus stacking, right? Or focus bracketing in the shot and see what happens. And one of them will be in focus. So you can try that maybe, right? Do turn on focus bracketing when you're taking shots of bees and see if that works. But if you just want to use an autofocus, I would say use continuous autofocus, single fine point, right? The little one, continuous autofocus, and with a continuous low shutter speed, and just fire away. And hopefully one of them will be in focus, because the odds of like just that bee staying on that flower long enough for you to get it in focus are pretty slim. Michael's asking, are you purchasing an EM5 without Wi-Fi? What iPad app or software do I need to get my photo transferred using the card? You don't need an app. You just need a, what do you call those things? It's on a dongle. An OTC card. OTC over the cable. Man, I have one around here somewhere. It's on my laptop, or on my iPad. It's on my tablet. I have an Android tablet, but it's just I guess for Apple it might be a USB-C, but it's a USB-C plug, and on the other end is an SD card reader, and that plugs in. But I think it needs to be an OTC version. If there's any difference, I'm not sure, but get the one that says OTC, and then when you plug it in, it becomes like an external drive on your tablet or iPad, I assume. And then you can just copy the files to wherever you want from there, or edit them directly on the SD card if you want. OTG, thank you, OTG, on the go. Yeah, my memory. You guys know I don't have any brain. There's things that I use all the time, then there's things that I use once in a while, and then there's things I almost never use, but I have for some reason, like this stupid thing, right? It was handy when I had it, but I wonder if any of you know what this thing is. If anyone knows what that is, speak up. If no one knows, I'll tell you. But yeah, Michael, it's an OTG, like Dave, an old player, was saying. That's just like adding an SD card to your SD card slot to your tablet or iPad. And there's that thing, and then John got it. It's a lens opener. So what you do is you yeah, Michael knows. So for those of you who don't know, on the end of a lens, I'm not going to use a real lens, but sometimes you'll see little indents that you use to be able to twist and take the front lens element out. Because I used to buy those vintage Nikon glass, and then I would try and fix them. Or if you need to clean the front element, you know, because there's fungus inside or something stupid, then you can take it apart using one of these. But now that I got all the lenses I want, I just never use it anymore. Unless I find a lens has fungus in it, then I might take it apart and clean it. But I wonder if these lenses have, you know, I don't even see it on these. This is my Fuji. This doesn't have the little indents in it for me to, oh, yeah, there's one. Nope, that's for the lens hood. So this doesn't even have it. So it looks like modern lenses, they kind of done away with that to some extent. My 12-40 has it though. I'm using the 12-40 here. That has a little thing. I could take the front element off the 12-40 if I want. Actually, I got a different tool for taking the watch apart. But yeah, I guess I don't know, I'm not really a watchsmith, so I couldn't tell you. But I got different tools that take different backs of watches off. That's a whole different kind of tool. It's similar to that, but instead of being long, it's flat, right? And it gives you more torques than that does. That doesn't give you a lot of torques. Plato says, why does Ollie have spot metering? High and low in addition to normal spot metering. Well, sometimes you want to spot meter on a specific area of the image, right, of the composition, and you want to meter for that one spot correctly, and that's you know, that's actually a core photography skill you should have, is knowing when to use spot metering. You know, I did a video on spot metering using a flash, where it comes in very, very handy for me as a professional, and I showed you how you could, you know, use this, and you can think of ways. Once I show you the technique, then you have to kind of think creatively how you can use that. But spot metering in of itself is a very powerful tool in the camera. Now the spot high and spot low, I forget which is which. I never use those, but the idea being is you spot meter for a specific area that you want. God, I'm having trouble articulating this, but it's about spot metering only for the highlights and letting the exposure of everything else get crushed down low. Then spot metering low is kind of the opposite. I forget which is which. Where's my camera? Let me just refresh my own memory here. Spot metering high. Okay, so spot metering high will expose for the shadows, right? And spot metering low will expose for the highlights. So it's just over and under exposing a couple of stops. You know, it's not something I use much because I feel like you don't have as much control, and when you're using spot metering, you really are trying to take control of the lighting. So I never use the other two. Can you move the spot metering point from the absolute center? On the EM5 Mark III, EM1 Mark II, the Pen F, maybe the EM5 Mark II, there's a setting in the menu It really depends which camera you have. EM10 Mark II, EM10 Mark III don't have it. But in the menu, where is it? Is it in the AF? It's probably an exposure. There it is, yeah. No, it's got to be in the A menu. Center start, no. Pointer, no. Control. God, I should know this off the top of my head. I just can't remember now. Dang, I just used it on this camera about a week ago. Oh, here, it's in the, yeah, it is in the exposure menu. No. Metering. The problem is I can't read the menu. Oh, you have the M10 Mark II, so yeah, you don't worry about it then. You won't be able to link the but there's a way to link the spot metering to the focus point, so you can move it around with the focus point. But on the M10 Mark II, basically you just lock the exposure. So you'll have to lock the exposure, then recompose, and you might have to separate the focusing from the exposure. So you can do focus recompose, exposure recompose with spot metering, and then you should be able to do portraits just fine using spot metering. Yeah, Frank is saying the same thing. Spot metering on the focus point and matrix. But yeah, you can't do that on the EM10 Mark II. It's the spot meter is always dead center. Is there anywhere you can send requests to Olympus for future improvements to workspace? I don't know. I doubt they'd listen, to be honest, though. That the workspace is basically, all they did is they took software that they developed in the cameras, converted it for use on computers, and then added a few more features, right? They didn't honestly put a lot of work into it as a software development thing. As opposed to, I mean, it's a lot more work than other companies do for their own cameras in terms of software, by far. I mean, the software that comes with other camera companies just suck, but it's not like a dedicated third-party software. Bob has asked me, are you aware of Derek Force and his YouTube channel? He's very much ETTL photographer, uses spot a lot as he hates blown highlights and lifts shadows in post. Yes, I have seen Derek's channel. I don't connect with him too well in terms of learning. I mean, his content's fine. It just doesn't connect with me too well, so I don't watch his channel much. But if it works, you know, because, you know, you learn differently from different people, right? You learn better from some people than from others. So when I watch his channel, I can't I can't concentrate when I watch it. Just things don't sink in, I should say, is what I'm saying. For whatever reason, as well as say other channels. But yeah, ETTL and all of that, I don't know. You know, it's a legitimate technique, right? Trying to expose to the right, but essentially the idea is you want to capture as much light as you can without clipping the highlights, right? But when you expose to the right and you push the highlights all the way to the edge but not clipped, you're really, I think, potentially losing some data, you know, but the technique is the technique itself is legitimate. You definitely can use it time to time, but it's not something I practice regularly. Yeah, very old school and very British. Yeah, that's definitely spot on. His channel. But yeah, you should check out his channel. it might you know, it might resonate with you, and you'll learn a lot from his channel, no question. It just didn't, that's the word I need, resonate. It didn't resonate with me as well. It's amazing with all the people on YouTube telling us how to do things. Only Rob takes us step by step and ensures we all start on the same page as a reset. I try. But thanks, Rick. I believe ETTC, exposure to the center. You get all you can and deal with the blown out highlights in post. Yeah. Like I said, it's you know, it's all about getting the exposure that you want in the image, not about, you know, all these other techniques are geared towards you intend to post-process these image, right? If you expose to the right, expose to the left, maybe expose to the center to some extent, but definitely expose to the right and left. The intent is to get the image and then process it in post, you know, do the processing later. That's why I'm not a much of it, don't use it much, because I like to get everything in camera the way I want. Just because that's just how I like to shoot, right? I like to shoot and get it as close as I can in camera to the exposure, the final exposure that I want. So if I want detail in the shadows, I don't worry about the highlights. You know, if I want the highlights, then I don't worry about the shadows. I expose it or compose it in a way that it's okay if the shadows are crushed on the black and there's no detail, because what I'm trying to take a picture of is in the highlights. You know, exposure to the right, the idea being you want to capture everything, right? You want to capture as much as you can in the shadows, capture as much as you can in the highlights, and then take that into post-processing so that you get as little noise as possible when you're processing the shadow area. But like I said, the intent, I think, of ETTR is definitely, the intent is to go back and post-process the image. Whereas I would take the image, and if I want the highlights to be exposed properly, then I'll expose it in a way and compose it in a way that the highlights are important and the shadow areas just become, it doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter what's in the shadows. I don't need to see them. And if I really need to see everything, you know, I'll just bracket the shot and you know, layer them and merge them back together. And that's why I don't like to do it, because it's just a lot of extra work. That doesn't, it kind of takes away the joy of the photography for me. Now, as a professional photographer, you definitely want to use every technique available to you, right? Where, you know, I think, what's his name? Anyway, there's landscape photographers out there that, you know, they bracket their shots, or they do ETTR. They do a lot of things to get the best exposure and the most detail out of everything in that image, and do a lot of post-processing. You know, because they're going to sell their prints or they're going to publish a calendar or do whatever. They want to get the best of everything, right? And that totally makes sense, right? But it's just not something for me. I go out when I take photography, I do it for fun, right? I do it just as a shutter therapy, as Robin would say, right? It's relaxing. Now in my professional work, yeah, I definitely bracket shots and I use flash and I do everything I can to make sure the exposure is perfect, you know? But not for my just general photography. Did I enjoy the British real estate pictures? Yeah. Oh my God, I laughed so hard when you saw that. No, most real estate photographers, most of the real estate photographers here in the U.S. are pretty good, actually. They do a good job. It's the agents that don't want to pay for a photographer. They suck. They take the worst pictures, you know, of the property. Even though they buy a legit camera, they still take terrible pictures, right? Because they don't know how to do it. You know, they don't know anything about photography. And that's what it looked like you showed me, was something that maybe the agent took pictures and they had a decent camera because the exposures were actually, exposure wise, he or she did a good job with the exposures in those images, but the lines and angles, oh my God, they were just a wreck. Yeah, the real estate photos here are bad when the agent does it, but the work I've seen from people that I compete with, they do excellent work. They, you know, especially when you compare it to my early on stuff from like 5 years ago, my photos, the lines were straight, but the exposures weren't that great. You know, I had trouble getting white balance right with mixed lighting, and because I put so much focus on getting the lines straight and the right composition for the property. But then I ran into lighting situations, right? There'd be like this strong fluorescent green cast, and then there'd be like strong light coming in through the windows, and those things didn't mix well. I kind of got that all figured out now, but yeah, cheap estate agents. Dave says, what gets me in real estate photography is that they use such a wide angle lens that the tiny rooms look like a palace. Yeah. Yeah, we do. I mean, the only way to really get a small room, or any room really of any size, to look normal is you have to do a panoramic, right? So that nothing gets distorted. You're taking a nice straight on rectilinear image at a normal perspective or focal length, and then you stitch them together. But then the shots are like this wide and everything looks perfectly proportioned, but no real estate website, you know, like the MLS and all the universal systems that they use, the databases, really allow for wide panoramic shots. It's not geared for that. So you have to be able to capture the entire room in a 1x1 or 4x3 or 4x5 format. And the only way to do that in one shot is a single wide angle lens. Yes, the 7-14, not the, when you say M7-14, I have the Panasonic 7-14, and I did use that the first couple of years, the first 3 or 4 years in real estate, but then I bought the 8mm fisheye, and that's all I use now. I'm waiting for the 8 to 25mm f4 coming from Olympus, supposedly. That's the lens I'm going to replace my fisheye lens with for my professional work. It's just not out yet. If it never comes out, maybe the 918 might be a good substitute. I just don't see spending the money for a 7-14. I don't know. Maybe. I have to give it some thought. But the 7-14 f2.8 is just too big and heavy a lens for what I do. I don't need f2.8 in real estate. You know, I shoot at f4, f5.6, maybe even f8, depending if I have enough light. And, you know, so I don't want to have that big honking lens. And it's a $1,400 lens on top of that. So if I can get the 8-25 f4 for like less than $1,000, I would definitely get that lens, and that'll replace my fisheye lens that I use now. Yeah, Randy bought the 8mm for fisheye for Astro, and that's why I bought it originally. You know, I bought it as a dual purpose lens. I wanted to use it primarily for Astro, but then also use it for my real estate. Now I use it exclusively for my real estate, and I just haven't made time to do any Astro, but yeah. What are you saying, Dave, the 8-24? I'm not sure if that's positive or negative. Do you want one, or do you like think it's stupid? You want a 40-150 f4. Oh, okay. Randy wants a 40-150 f4. I think that would just be too slow. I think the 40-150 f2.8 is just right. I think if they made an f4, I don't see a reason to buy that. I guess maybe, you know, because the 40-150 kit lens, that's like $99. That's a great lens and it's very sharp, but it's, you know, it doesn't hold a candle to the 40-150, the 40-150 Pro lens, right? So I could see that. I'd see there'd be a market for that. Image stabilization. Yeah. But you know, you have image stabilization in the camera, and the focal length 40-150 is not so much that you really need more than what the camera can deliver already, I think. I'm trying to think of the current 40-f1. Does the current 40-150 Pro have image stabilization? I don't think it does either. David says he has an 8-16 Sigma for the Canon. Man, that's wide. Wow. Because, you know, whether it's APS-C or full frame, that's a wide lens. Okay, so you have the 40-150 f2.8, but it does not have image stabilization. Okay, so I guess, yeah, if they can work out the image sync, right, the stabilization synchronization, but yeah, that's not a, I just don't see that really. I don't know. I don't use that lens, so I don't know how bad the image stabilization is right now, camera only. The 918 is really good, yeah. It does look ordinary. It's kind of their old design, right? From the Olympus PL1, probably. I mean, that's a very old lens. So it needs a little updating. I think that's what the 8-25 is supposed to be. It's supposed to update that lens. The dolly birds who they hire in real estate agents would fall over if they had to rotate through 360. Yeah, oh my god, I was editing some 360. I've been playing with 360 video since I got that camera. Man, those things are pain to edit, man. 360 video. Wow. It's really cool when you're done, but it takes hours and hours and hours and hours and hours to render. I did like a 20-second clip took like 2 minutes to render. So imagine if you had a 1 hour clip, you know, you'd have to wait 3-4 hours for it to finish. And I got, you know, really, I've been looking at new machines, but I got a decent video editing machine here. You know, a 6-core, 32 gig, you know, full-on NVMe SSDs, and I've even overclocked it slightly, and it's still, man. Yeah, the panning to 7:14 is really nice, but I have a, John, I have terrible lens flaring issues with it. I worked around it when I was using it for real estate, but sometimes I couldn't, and the image just was not, I delivered it, but it was not perfect or up to my standards. You could do a chat on image stabilization, okay. I like how they say in real estate that a tiny house is cozy and a dump is a house with potential. That's right, fixer-upper. That's what we call it here. Or, well, you're from here, the US. What graphic? It's an older one, but I have a GTX 1060 with 6 gig of RAM. Which, you know, for final rendering, it's not as critical, the video card. Final rendering, the video card's helpful while you're editing, right? And if you are adding a lot of special effects, I think the video card helps, but I don't do a lot of special effects. I just need some straight up raw, you know, video image processing, which is all CPU based. And that, man. So I was looking, I'm trying to decide. There's a laptop that I want. It's got the new Ryzen 7 48 or 4900H. You know, it's an 8-core 16-thread, which is just kicking Intel's butt. And by all measures, it's double the speed of what I have now, my 6-core Intel. But I'm debating if I should just go ahead and build a 16-core Ryzen desktop system, and then I can buy like a GTX 2080 card. You know, I can really geek it out, but then we're talking like, you know, almost $3,000 for a, you know, full-on editing machine that would have the specs that I'd want it to have. That's a chunk of change, man, for something that's going to be outdated in a few years. I mean, I don't do that much real estate work to pay for a machine like that. You know what I mean? Yeah, 1070 card, yeah. Yeah, the 1070 card, I like the 10, but you know, it's a laptop, so I can't change the graphics card in it. I did look at laptops with a GTX 2070 because, you know, it has the 256-bit, you know, memory, so the bandwidth is very high, and of course the extra CUDA cores and all of that helps. But what I'm finding is that the final, you know, unless I'm doing a lot of special effects, right, that would use the graphic card stuff, I really need the horsepower in the CPU. Not so much the video card. I still need plenty of memory. You know, that's why I looked at a 2070, is because I can get an 8 gig 2070 video card, whereas the 2060s seem to be all limited at 6 gigs in the card. So to have a little bit of future proofing, if I got an 8 gig 2070 card, I would be able to handle 4K video a little better for future proofing. And that's what's holding me back from AMD right now, is I can't find a laptop that has a 2070 card in it and an AMD Ryzen processor. So I looked at some Lenovo Legions with the 8-core Intel chip and a 2070 graphics card. Man, but now we're getting up to $2,000-$3,000 again, right? you know, it's just a chunk of change, man. And yeah, build my own machine. I'm just yeah, Rick says always buy a powerful desktop. It's cheaper and you can keep on upgrading. I used to feel that way with the desktops, right? So back in 2012, I bought and built my own system. I bought an AMD 8350 with 16 gig of DDR3 and I forget, I bought a GTX card. I can't remember which one was out at the time. But, and you know, I got water cooling. I bought a, you know, 800 watt power supply. I had dual graphic video cards, and I bought a nice case for it with like 420 millimeter fans, and you know, and I built it myself, and then I put a nice front panel on it that had temperature sensors on all the different things, and it was really pretty, you know. And it's still downstairs, and I still use it, or I haven't used it in a couple of years. But the problem with upgrading is, you know, it used the old AM3 socket set. Nobody uses that anymore, so I really can't upgrade it. I'd have to buy an all new system, and that's the problem I found with buying desktops is, yeah, they say you can upgrade things, and I think for the first 2 years, yes, you can upgrade things. You can upgrade maybe the CPU, maybe the graphics card. You can add some memory to it. But after 3 or 4 years, you know, the entire CPU architecture's changed. They got a whole new socket set. They got new memory out. You know, we went from DDR to DDR2 to DDR3 to DDR4 now. And they're talking about another one coming out. They got new graphic cards coming out. You know, and the PCI slots, I have, those are PCI 2.0 slots in that motherboard. So I don't buy that logic anymore about buying a desktop, because you can always upgrade the parts later. It makes sense if you buy a very basic desktop with low-end components, then yeah, for the next year or two, you can upgrade very nicely, substantially, as your budget allows. But I'd like to just buy a very powerful laptop that's good for 2-3 years, and then buy another one, right? Versus buying a desktop that really is not going to cost that much less when I added everything up. And it's not portable. There's too many trade-offs with a desktop anymore. So, yeah, yeah, Rick, I haven't found the upgrade path a legitimate argument anymore, even for desktops. Unless you buy a desktop with virtually, you know, basic specs to begin with, then yeah, you can upgrade memory and graphic cards for a couple of years, but then things change. You know, because that desktop I have downstairs, it's in a beautiful, you know, case with water cooling and 16 gigs of DDR2 RAM in it, but we're up to DDR4 now. So I can't use the RAM anymore. The graphic cards are just dated, and the CPU architecture is gone. You know, I can't just buy a new CPU. So anyway. I typically change every 2 to 3 years on the laptops, Dave. Oh, here's a question on cameras. Hi, Rob. I have a Mark 1 recently and our EM1 Mark III, and there is a multifunction setting, but I don't see physical button for this. Where and how do I assign this function? Okay, that's an easy question. Let me highlight this so it doesn't disappear. What's this? This is my Mark III, right? Let me go in the button menu and see where my multifunction button is right now. I may have switched it around. Okay, so you go into the button menu, right? So you go into the button menu like this dang green screen. Let me turn this off real quick and I'll show you. All right, so you go into the button menu, right? And I'm gonna assign this to multifunction, like so, right? So now this button is assigned to multifunction. But then when I push it, you'll notice that the highlights and shadows come up, right? So what you have to do is you press and hold it and then rotate, press and hold it, and then rotate the front dial like so. So you press and hold and then rotate the front dial, and then you can see all the different multifunctions come up. And you can change which multifunctions are available to you. It's in a different menu. Where is that? I think it's in the display menu. It's like in another menu, which is stupid. But you go into the display menu here, right? D1, and you see where it says multifunction settings. And you go in there, and then in here are all the different things you can assign the multifunction settings. So these are the things that'll show up when you press and hold the whatever button you assign the multifunction to. So that is that. See, I know stuff sometimes. Let's see. For me, I use a laptop to travel, web surf, and use a big machine for photo editing. Yeah. Like I said, I could buy a really high-end desktop system, but then, you know, that's it's closer to $3,000. Because if I get a desktop, I'm going to go 32 gig, 16 core, a GTX 2080, and that all added up to like $3,000. And then you have to get a monitor, right? A nice 4K monitor. There's another $500 to $1,000, and I'm like, I don't know. I'd just rather use a laptop. So many upgrades each year, Rob. I used to change components every year in my Windows. I cannot be bothered now just to get a good iMac and a refurb. Yeah. I have a Sega 6-year-old laptop, just upgraded the CPU and graphics card. Oh, that's interesting. I forgot that, yeah, there were some laptops that had upgradable components. And like I said, if you're doing just photo editing, most, my 8-year-old laptop will edit photos in Lightroom easily. My 5-year-old laptop does a great job. It has a quad-core Intel, hyper-thread with a GTX 960, and that still does a good job. But it only had a 2 gig memory card or 2 gig video card. So 2 years ago, when I really got into YouTube, it kept crashing on me when I was editing videos. So I had to upgrade again. And in theory, if I had a desktop, yeah, I could have just bought a new video card for like $500 and not have to buy a whole new laptop. But then right now, I wouldn't be able to upgrade the CPU in that desktop, and that's what I really need. And so I went with this laptop. And sometimes I take this laptop with me to clients, and I don't have to worry about where all my photos and files are, right? They're all on this laptop. So when I take the laptop with me, I just I'm good, right? And I have external drives for the laptop, but those are mainly for backup, not for my current work. And so like I said, it's a trade-off. Yeah, desktop's more powerful, more bang for the buck. But ultimately, if I have to pick one, because I'm not going to buy both, I'm going to pick a laptop every time. Let's see. Trevor, Panasonic 15 would be a good choice. Did I miss Trevor's question? Yeah, sorry, Trevor. Yeah, Lauren made a good suggestion. The 20 millimeter, yeah, that's a great lens. The Nikon 20 millimeter f1.8. The best equivalent, yeah, would probably be, I would go either 12 millimeter f2, which is not quite as wide as that. The closest would be the 12 millimeter f2. The 15-1.8 is a great lens too, but I would probably steer you towards the 12 millimeter f2 just to get a little bit, you know, a little bit wider. Wider than that, let me think. The 8 millimeter, what is it? Yeah, Olympus really, there's a little bit of a gap in Olympus's lineup, right? They don't have a really super fast wide angle lens. The best one they have right now is the 12 millimeter f2. The 8 millimeter f1.8 is a fisheye. That's a good equivalent, but then you have to do the correction and post-processing, which is not a big deal. If you don't mind fixing fisheye correction in post. But straight out of camera, the 12 millimeter f2 is about the fastest, widest angle lens. Otherwise, you have to go to the 7-14 f2.8. How often do you change laptops versus how often do you get a desktop case to rebuild? Well, before I switched to laptops completely, I was switching desktops every couple of years anyway. Man, forever. I've got about 5 or 6 different cases downstairs, which I should just chuck now. They're totally useless. Even the power supplies aren't even compatible, if they even still work. That's the other thing, you know, the power supplies, the plugs and things change on those too. So even if years later I decide, okay, let's swap the motherboard out, I don't know if the power supply is going to be compatible in the pins, right, and the new memory cards, because that was the other problem I ran into. Was I upgraded to this new system and I said, crap, I need to buy a new power supply because my previous power supply, even though it had enough power, did not have the right pinouts for the plugs into the graphic card. Yeah, but anyway, yeah, I did rebuild and build desktops all the time. I was a hardcore system builder for a while. If you guys haven't figured that out yet by all my computer gibberish, right? Hi Rob, okay, I answered that. I answered this. So many upgrades each year, Rob. I used to change components every year in my Windows PC. I've not bothered now since you got a Mac. Yeah. Buy a motherboard CPU bundle. Yeah, that's what I do. They have a system builder online that I use, and I said, okay, let me put together my dream system. You know, a 16-core Ryzen, whatever, GTX 2080, you know, Super TI, and a 32 gig of DDR 3200, and you know, 800 watt power supply, then a nice case, and yeah, I was up to like $2,200, and I haven't even bought the monitor yet. And I was like, man, I can get a really freaking nice laptop for $2,200. Your TV monitor and your computer monitor should be one and the same. Same with your TV surround sound and music. I don't have a very good TV, Rick, to be honest. Up until about a year ago, I was using a tube TV. Seriously. Old tube TV that's not collecting dust. And the only other TV I have is an old Samsung TV. And yeah, it's not that good. An old Samsung LCD. I do have, you know what, come to think of it, I do have a 50-inch plasma TV that I bought back in 2009. I think I'm going to take that over to Goodwill. It's hardly been used. Anyway. Yeah, but a lot of people, they do use their TV monitors as a monitor. You can buy like a nice 4K TV monitor for about $500. It's like, man, that's so huge. I can't work with a big giant monitor. And there's some issues with color. They do claim to be DCI-P3 rated, Pantone rated, all of that, but it's not the same as having a truly calibrated monitor out that you would buy for a PC. All right, I need to get ready for my next stream that's starting like in 3 minutes for the photo editing. Now there's if you know, I have another stream where I do the photo editing. So if you, well, it's too late, but I was saying every Thursday and Sunday right after my normal live stream, I do a photo editing stream where you guys can submit your images, where I, you know, edit them live on in the stream. So you know, just check those videos out to submit. And I usually post to my community tab, you know, links where you can submit your photos. But lately I've been adding my own photo that you guys can download and edit and send in, because I'm always curious to see what people do with my photos, right? And I don't send great photos out. You know, I pick an image that I was struggling with to get a decent composition out of, or editing. And you know, it's always fun to see other people's take on the same image, right? So yeah, there's some amazing monitors that work with computer and TV. That's true. That's true, but they're too big. You know, you have to buy minimum 43-inch. But most of the ones that have perfect Pantone qualified color are 50-inch monitors, and that's just too big to work with. Of course, with my dying eyes, might not be a bad idea. friends don't let friends use CRTs. Yeah. I hardly watched anything on it. You know, I just use my laptop to watch Netflix or whatever. Dave says, if I have a C1 custom button with sequential high for shutter speed, is there a way to change it? Let's see. I think you have the M1 Mark III, right, Dave? So, I mean, you can change it. I'm not sure exactly what the question is. I mean, the answer is yes, there is a way to change it. You just go into Super Control Panel, change it, and then there's a couple of different ways for that to set. In the custom menu, C1 menu, you can have it remember any changes you make after you turn off the camera, or you can have it forget changes you make. So watch my video on this customizing C1 through C4, because I can't remember off the top of my head exactly. But yeah, I mean, it's you just change it just like you would if you were in any other mode, but it's just a matter of whether it will get saved into the custom setting after you turn the camera off, right? Or if it goes to sleep and wakes back up, sometimes it forgets what was the last shutter mode you had set. So there's a setting in the C1 menu. Let me see. It's not something I use much, but yeah, it's the second line item, custom mode. save settings, and there you can have it say reset or hold. So if you have it set to hold, it'll remember any changes you make while you're in C1. Okay, I need to go and start my next live stream, so go to the next live stream on my channel about photo editing, and there's a link in the description about where you can download that photo. But okay, thanks everyone for joining. Hopefully everyone, I answered everyone's questions. I hope I got to them all. I kind of talked a lot about other stuff today, but I appreciate you guys joining, and I'll see you guys in the photo editing live stream, hopefully.